Welcome to Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. And we've set out to create a platform where people can network and connect through their affinity relationships. So whether it's college alumni, fraternities, sororities, could be business alumni associations, and athletes, we'll give a place to make it real easy for people to network and connect. And we've created this show to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. And today we're really excited to have Mark Moyer on. What's us, Mark? How you doing today?
Fantastic.
That's great. So Mark, he's a real sports enthusiast athlete. He played college sports. Played both rugby and tennis. As we talked about earlier, it's kind of a unique connection there between the two different sports, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. He's also an author, has done some books, and he is the founder and CEO of the Win Again Academy. And he does a lot with that, with networking events and promoting his book. And it's really great to have you and want to hear your story.
Fabulous. Listen, there's so much to talk about. I'm thrilled with what you're doing. So let's keep cranking along here. It's great.
Absolutely. So first question I always ask people, talk about how playing sports growing up kind of shaped you leading into college.
So at a very, very young age, I was extremely competitive. I had to throw a rock farther than someone else. I had to, whatever it was, everything. And growing up, I was more of I played baseball, but I also played a lot of tennis. I was a racket sports kind of guy. And then, some soccer, but I couldn't understand why you couldn't use your hands. I thought that was ridiculous. So I grew up playing baseball and that sort of thing. And then, into college where I saw how much fun everybody was having playing rugby. And even though it was kind of a bit of a badass sport, I thought it was fantastic. So I incorporated the rugby into my tennis because then what I would do is run over to the other side of the court and tackle a person. I didn't really know it was, no, I didn't do that. I should have though. Anyways, but look, I think that one of the organizations I support quite a bit is called Every Kid Sports, and what they do is they go in and they pay for a child's registration fee to play sports here in the States. And I think it's so important because I think to me as a child, there's so many benefits to playing a sport competitively that really lead to, I think, business success. And as long as the parents don't get too involved, because I've seen a lot of that, especially more recently. But I think that as especially younger kids, if they play seasonal sports, maybe basketball, they play some hockey, they play some baseball, they play some, rotate around versus just focusing on one throughout. I think that's really important. So I think playing sports as a child absolutely shaped everything that I'm doing now.
That's great. And so here's one that I always ask is, did you dream of being a professional athlete? And if so, what sport?
Um, yes, and definitely baseball, and definitely shortstop, ideally for the Yankees. But this was way before. This is when they all sucked. So the threshold was really not that high. It wasn't Jeter or something. So I thought I always had a chance, but didn't quite get there. Quite.
Yeah, it's funny because I always joke with people on every show, and when I ask that question, I turn around and say, I had aspirations. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player as well. Unfortunately, the talent wasn't there, so now I do this.
Well, which is better? You're providing much more value than you would have on the diamond,
Yeah,
Rob.
absolutely, it's kind of like Field of Dreams, where he's better off being the doctor than the player, right?
Well, it's funny. I just finished telling my wife that Verlander just signed yesterday or whatever it was with the Mets, 2 years, 86 million. And here's a guy, he's 39. So at the age of 40 and 41, he's gonna be making, 43 million a year, which is basically, a million for
For
first
start,
start.
yeah,
Crazy. This guy
it
rolls out
is.
of bed. Says, oh, I got a game today. I'm gonna be Verlander for, 8 innings,
Yeah.
throw a shutout ball, give up 4 hits, and whiff 10 guys and ka-ching.
Absolutely, and as a Met fan, I'm very happy about that because losing the Grom. So let's fast forward to college. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about and obviously there's gaps in time, and you like me, we went a while back, so things have changed. But what kinds of things were they doing? You went to Colgate, and as an athlete there, were there programs that the athletic department put on to kind of help athletes to think about what their transition might look like after they're done with their collegiate sports?
Let me give you the really long answer to that question. Nothing. They didn't look. I don't want to say back in those days because I still think a lot of this exists today.
Right.
The thought was in collegiate athletics, look, their thought is, we're here to put on a great team, to present a good product, to present a top football team, top baseball team, water polo, whatever the sport was. Coach is there to coach these kids to be better at the sport and hopefully have a winning team. There really wasn't much thought about how to shape them while they're playing to be in a position to succeed once they graduate. A lot of their thought process is, and this is the same for Colgate. I reached out to Colgate athletic director a few years ago, and I said, "Look, I'd love to come up and speak to the kids and talk to them about, how to be prepared for that transition from playing a sport and college life into the future." And they came back and said, "No, we're good." I'm like, "What do you mean you're good?" "Oh, well, we had 100% graduation rate last year for our student athletes." And I'm like, it sort of missed the point. They're all graduating, but then what?
Right.
And that was the disconnect there. And I think that still happens. And look, when I was at school at Colgate, there really wasn't, as far as I'm concerned, anything that was specifically done to prepare student athletes for life after collegiate athletics. But I bet we're here to change that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's because I hear the same answer from a lot of different schools. I talked to one former NFL, or actually, I was talking to an agent of an NFL
Mm.
player, and he wanted to go back to his school, and he was a pretty prominent athlete there, a football player. And they kind of had the same attitude that you faced at Colgate. It's just like, hey, thanks, but no thanks. And I think that obviously there's value of tapping in the alumni to coming back and talking to these athletes. And a lot of people say, okay, well, maybe there's like 1 hour class on it when they first start, but as we know, because we're both in this field of trying to help athletes transition, that that's not good enough. I mean, there needs to be a better effort. They might be doing some things at the school, but be open to working with different resources to help their athletes out, especially not only the current ones but the alumni as well.
Absolutely. And I get it to an extent that the school is saying to themselves, well, we're an academic institution. We're really all super smart here. And we are really, who better than us to prepare these undergrads for life after school and everything else. But they're also, the problem is that they see everything in a very myopic state where they're right on campus and they see everything via the lens of the campus and not the world that's out there. And I think sometimes they're threatened by people like us who can come in with an outsider's perspective and teach them, here's what some of these student athletes really need to know. I think they're worried that we're going to come in and take their job or something. I don't know, but I
Yeah,
think
I think you're right. I mean, I think it seems like in general with the colleges, they look at it as a competitive situation when it really isn't. We try to take that approach. It's more of an extension of them and to kind of create this partnership.
yeah,
So, one thing that obviously with we're doing with Alumni Direct is it's about networking and helping alumni connect with each other. So when you were, this is a two-part question. So one, when you were at Colgate playing, did you see were alumni engaged either from the school or just on their own merits to come back in? And I know you told us what happened now, but did alumni get involved at all other than being boosters to things to that nature?
so let me give you the two-part answer, even though that was one question, I think, but let me answer it a couple different ways. One is that when I was playing rugby at Colgate, there was no interaction with alums. I didn't even know, I didn't know any, and it was we were on campus and those people were way out there somewhere. Obviously, the internet and everything else has changed a
Sure.
lot of that, where there's a lot more interaction. But nowadays, what's interesting is that several years ago, about 8 years ago, we hosted our first Colgate rugby um, sort of alumni gathering get together here in New York. And it's grown to 100 and some odd alums that get together that played rugby at Colgate, but it's networking, it's helping the undergrads really be in position to succeed when they graduate. But they also did a fundraiser, and they just raised like a couple $1 million, I mean, crazy amounts of money. And it just shows the power of alumni networking. I can only speak from Colgate's perspective, but we have an incredibly strong alumni network. Tends to not be completely tied into what the university is doing. It seems to be run on its own almost, because that seems to be where there's more success in getting things accomplished. So I think that even though back in those days there really wasn't much, I see it getting better. I still think there's room for improvement, but I think that what you're doing with Alumni Direct is fantastic, because having a place for alums to get together and congregate and get things accomplished is it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and that's what it's all about, because it's just helping to facilitate those connections. And like you said, I think it's great that they're doing that now. And I always talk about with networking that you look at your Ivy League schools, and you look at some of the other prominent schools
Yeah.
that do a good job of that. And then you also look at maybe athletes or salespeople, fraternity, sorority. They understand networking, but it seems like most people don't. So just trying to facilitate and bringing some of these alumni athletes back. And I guess now, I kind of hit you up with, back when you were there, and you did mention about how you wanted to come back, but are you seeing anything now at Colgate, or just, just in general with your interactions and things that you're doing, that schools are making a little more of an effort to reach out to their alumni, or even if they're not, that at least the coaches or the athletes are trying to tap into that alumni from those sports?
So it's funny you mentioned that. I think historically, alumni always viewed the school as trying to reach out to them to raise funds, period. Not necessarily to have programming in place, but to raise money. I've noticed that with Colgate over the last, I don't know, decade or 15 years or something, is that they have had sort of Colgate sponsored events in New York and nationwide, that might be a cocktail party for this, or the so-and-sos are coming to sing, or whatever it is, or something that engages alums. I think they still want to try to focus on, okay, we're glad you all had a great time, cough up some cash, kind of a thing.
Right.
But I haven't, you know, the thing is that I believe that a lot of programming is, I don't want to say on demand, but it's almost like if you're interested in getting help on how to build a resume, click on this link and watch this video. And it's something that I need to dig up. And I think there should be more from the alumni associations, groups, or groups of people that will come out and offer it out, because I may not know I need help, let's say with my resume, but if someone comes out and has an article on the Colgate alumni site or email that says, hey, John Smith is going to teach us the 5 most important things to have on your resume, come check it out on July 9th or something. I think there'll be much more engagement that way than me trying to say, golly, I wish my alumni, whatever his group had some information on how to do a resume. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of room to grow, for sure.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I think, a lot of times when I talk to people, I think people are kind of leery sometimes of going to their alumni sites, because they're concerned with the fundraising aspects of it. And being I was a president of my alumni club, so there is a need for it, but I think it's the approach. It's a lot of times it's all about fundraising when it should be more about friend raising, and that's kind of what we're trying to do at Alumni Direct, is to your point, is having those learning series opportunities, within that community center, to engage the alumni, and give it, and coming from whether it's Alumni Direct resources, or just that particular college community, also. So we talked about alumni. One of the big parts of the show, like I mentioned in the beginning, was just talking about transition out of sports. So talk a little bit about your transition out of playing rugby and tennis, and maybe it wasn't that difficult. I mean, you'll talk about it, and so tell me a little bit about that. But then also, once you expand upon your journey, you're working with a lot of athletes, so you can kind of give that perspective as well.
Um, so the adage, do as I say, not as I do, applies here. When I graduated Colgate, this was a long time ago, but I I tried to look for work in the banking space. That's what I was an economics major, and again, I think playing sports was super helpful with the idea of just communication with people, being comfortable in front of people and in front of a stage, that sort of thing. But my timing wasn't great. That coincided with a sort of big fat old refresh, what do you call it, recession and all kinds of stuff. So I ended up driving out to LA and hung out there for a year. Worked at a boutique, super fancy Italian restaurant. It was called the Olive Garden. Not sure if you've heard of it. Um,
Occasionally.
yeah, great breadsticks. And
Absolutely.
and then sporting goods store. Anyway, I came back to New York and I had to really kind of be humble because there just nobody was hiring. I ended up thinking, gee, I'm going to be a fancy investment banker. I ended up selling copiers door to door in Manhattan, just kind of going like, hey, need a copier slam. Hey, need a copier slam kind of thing. And then that grew into a couple of other jobs in advertising, but then I completely stumbled into doing recruiting and headhunting and executive search. And I found out I was pretty good at it. I had no idea that was an actual industry at the time and ended up having a long career doing that. And then while I was doing that, I started my own company about 12 years ago and pivoted to doing more career and business coaching, coaching the individual versus working for the client. And then from there, about 5, 6 years ago, I started working with a retired NHL hockey player who um, was really struggling. I managed to help him within just a few weeks get him into a role that he was absolutely in love with. And then he said, Mark, you really need to focus on helping athletes. And at the time I was thinking, why? Man, they all retire, they're loaded, they live the dream, right? And then I started speaking to them and I found that almost none of them are living the dream when they retire because um, suddenly they're losing not just their identity as an athlete, but they're losing the locker room, the camaraderie, their family, their second family, right? They're losing their daily routine, their fitness routine, their nutrition routine. They're losing the adrenaline rush of playing in front of fans. There's so many things that suddenly are gone the day they retire. And now they're sitting on their couch and they may have a magnificent home and some nice golf clubs, a couple nice cars, whatever it is, but their mission is gone. They just don't have that anymore. And that to me is the big missing thing, whether you're a successful retired professional athlete or you're a student athlete playing at the University of Nowhere and you're playing, badminton or something. But if you've been playing a sport your whole life and suddenly the switch is turned off and you don't know which way to go, the analogy I use all the time is that it's almost like being thrust into a life raft in the middle of the ocean and you can't see, there's no, I mean, it's water everywhere and you've got a big giant paddle, and because you're an athlete you're strong and you can paddle a long way. The problem is you don't know which direction to go, you don't know where land is, so you're paddling in circles and you're nervous, you're scared, you're depressed, you're lonely, you're all these things, right? Because you don't know which way to go. And sometimes what you need is that guidance, whether it's from a coach like myself, of course, or books, or even internal collegiate sort of resources that will help give you the coordinates of that island that's over that way, and then you can get there, right? But that's the thing that I've seen with almost all the athletes I work with, Rob, is that they all just don't have that direction. They don't know what way to go. They don't know what they should be doing and can be doing. And one of my biggest concerns is that they are often approached by other people that say, hey, Rob, you are really great on the football field, but you'd be even better selling medical devices.
Right.
And you're like, what? Or you'd be great in real estate, Rob. You should, And so what happens is the athlete is being inundated all the time with things that they can be really good at because that's what serves the other person's interests. When instead of examining internally what they can really be good at, what they'd love to do next. One thing I tell people all the time, Rob, is that everybody, I believe strongly, everybody should wake up every morning excited and fired up to do what they do, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. If you're a subway conductor, if you're a plumber, an electrician, a this, a that, a lawyer, it doesn't matter what you do. It's so important to wake up every morning pretty excited about what you do. And the only way that happens is if you're incorporating things that you're good at, that you love doing, that you get sort of a fulfillment from doing. You know, you're just happy doing this stuff, and you're being rewarded for it. Then that's all you need, right?
Yeah, that's great advice there. I mean, I think the first one obviously being happy, and I think
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of these athletes obviously they're for the most part happy when they're playing sports. I mean, obviously there's ups and
yeah,
downs, and the competition, and all that are getting hurt, but to be happy about it, but then also like to just be open to things that are out there, and I think it gets back a little bit into the we talked a little about education. I've talked to these people just saying that it almost really needs to start at least in high school and then through college of just giving these athletes some perspective of to just look at that bigger picture. I was talking on another show earlier, and we talked about I was talking about a company that what they do is they work with the athletes, and instead of helping them pick their colleges, but instead of just being like all about the sport, and I want to go here because I want to play, Notre Dame or Alabama, Georgia, whatever it might be, to take more of a holistic approach and look at, okay, well, yeah, I want to do that sport, but I also want to major in this, and I want to have some type of a social life, and to kind of understand more on a big picture, holistic approach, and maybe if there's more education around that, that will help these athletes guide them through ultimately the transition into the real world.
you're absolutely right. You know, I think that one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give, and it's one of the biggest, I guess, regrets that most athletes have, is that they didn't start networking earlier in life and earlier in their career. And Rob, you're a pro at networking. I know you know that. I know that. Everybody knows that. Um, but it's not easy to do, and but it can be done, and it gets a lot easier once you've done it. Sort of you've introduced yourself a few times, then it gets easy after that. But to me, that's the biggest thing I would push upon anybody is I would encourage them. You can be in high school, freshman in high school, sophomore in high school, start, get to meet some of your neighbors, your parents, some of that, your parents' age. If you're in high school, if you're in college, do the same thing. Meet coaches, but also meet the professors, maybe even the ones that are not in your major, just to get to know people. The more people you know and develop a relationship with, you can leverage off of their networks. Because I've heard so many people that I work with say, "Oh, Mark, why should I connect with this? Why should I connect with Jane? She's not a VP of blah 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 or something." And I'll say because Jane's got neighbors, friends, and whatever it is it may be, right? Or whoever it might be. So that's why it's so important to just conversations, meetings, just
Yeah.
get out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's awesome, and I tell the same thing. You're right, because it could be like somebody wants to get a job, and they're like, hey, I'm looking for this, marketing position, so I need to talk to a marketing person. Well, you know what? If you're friends with the CFO or somebody in HR or another area, they might be friendly with that person. Or to your point, I mean, talking to neighbors and friends, and I like that. I was talking to one. A couple coaches and some agents, and they said that's the biggest failure they see is that most athletes, the best time to network and connect is when they're still playing and they're still in that spotlight, and a lot of them
Yeah.
don't. And understandably, they have the sport in mind. But that advice you just gave was fantastic, because you're right. If they, you can put a little bit of time here and there to, getting more comfortable and just talking. It could be a fellow student in your class that might be, someday that might be the next CEO, and there's your connection to like when you're out of sports. So that's great. So fast forward
Let
now.
me let me throw
Sure,
one
absolutely.
quick thing though. I just want to piggyback on because it just came to mind. But if you happen to be on a team that you're, I mean, you're traveling and you're going to different towns, cities, whatever it is in your area, do some advanced research, even use something like LinkedIn and find out who some of the business leaders are in those towns or cities. Reach out to them in advance and say, hey, my name is Bob Smith. I play basketball for the Peoria whatevers, and we're going to be in, whatever it is, in the Chicago area on June 27th. Would love to be able to swing by and just say hello to you in the afternoon. I'll have an hour between X and Y. Is it possible to say hello to you? Do that stuff in advance because everyone has their schedules in advance. So
Right.
you know when you're going to be in a city or town. and you generally know when your timing might be available, that you can go ahead and start booking some of these meetings in advance, but find people that you really want to see and meet, and your network will start going through the roof.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let's fast forward to
Yeah.
today. And I always tell
Yeah.
people in the beginning, I give a little bit about you, but
Mhm.
let's do the Mark commercial now. So talk a little bit about what you're doing today in this space, some of the different things you're doing, and then also how people can find you.
Cool. So short version is, by the way, that's a joke because I never have a short version of anything anymore. Um, but the branding is Win Again, and it's really focusing on how to be successful once again, once you've left your sport and going into your next venture, whatever it is, if it's joining a company as an employee or if it's starting your own business or partnering with somebody else. But we talk about within Win Again the concept of earn, learn, and connect. Three things. Earn is how we can help athletes, whether it's find products that they can endorse or things that they can be involved on the sales side, but ways that athletes can earn. The learn side is my my coaching and my advice that I've developed over the last 30 years, and it's all about really teaching again an athlete what is their true identity outside of their sport, how to be better at networking, how to create meetings that lead to interviews and offers, how to negotiate offers, how to perform well in the interview process, what to say to people when you meet them, how do you answer questions like what do you do and that sort of thing. And part of that whole learn thing is I just happen to have a copy here, but I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Win Again, and it's really, I tell people it's my $10,000 coaching program and a $20 book. It's everything in here teaches you the step-by-steps that you need to do to get things done. I've read too many books that are more theoretical and they don't really say, okay, do this, then do this, and do this. And athletes are accustomed to being coached. They're being accustomed to, if you do this, then this positive result will happen. If you run more wind sprints, you'll be better, you'll be able to close out the race better, that sort of thing. So that's what this book is all about. It's just do this, this, and this, and you will be better at all of these things. Anyway, that's the learn part. So I love working with athletes and executives to really elevate their game. And then the third part of it, the connect part, is I do a lot of what I call dot connecting. I connect whether it's athletes with businesses or businesses and businesses and founders and investors and that sort of thing. And I host events in the platform I call the Club Room, which is sort of Zoom on steroids, I guess. But it's a platform that really allows for a lot of interaction, and so many collaborations happen there. So it's really those three chunks plus sort of advising some startups on how to really get more of their branding out there and their messaging out there.
Oh,
And that's 2 hours a day. The
he,
rest,
he
no.
does he does a lot, and I will attest the club room is fantastic. It is a great place to for people to go and to collaborate. Like Mark said, I think it's important for people to know they can go to areas that that, again, that have that common interest and work together. So what where, like, again, the typical, we'll put this in the show notes, but like your website, Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so www stands for world now. Winagainacademy.com. Winagainacademy.com is the website, or you can go to markmoyer.com for lots of great advice and so forth. And then the Mark Moyer Coach or at Win Again Academy on all Instagram. I was talked into doing a TikTok channel, even though they're run by the Chinese. Did I say that out loud? And they're stealing all my data, whatever. But they're going to be so bored when they do that. But LinkedIn, me, Mark Moyer, and my email is mark@winagainacademy.com.
Well, everybody, like I said, it'll be in the show notes, and you definitely have to check Mark out. It's been great talking to you today. To find us, you can go to alumnidirect.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, and follow the show. I think this is something we want to continue to grow. We've had a lot of great shows and great guests like Mark, just really helping. It's athlete transition out of sport is a major issue, and you hear a lot of things between the financial and mental health and all that. We really want to make an impact. So I encourage everybody to follow that. And again, Mark, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Rob, it's my pleasure, and I love what you're doing with Alumni Direct. It's something that in my personal opinion, and maybe I'm biased because I'm talking to you here, but I think that you're at the tip of the iceberg. I think it's going to be enormous.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.